This is Breaking Down Security, and I am Brian Brake. Welcome back, listener. This is Brian, and sadly, no Mr. Betcher this week for Breaking Down Security. Mr. Betcher's out doing something with his family. He's got priorities, I guess, and they're not the podcast being priority zero. So, no, I'm just kidding. I told him that it was okay for him not to be here if he, family is very first on before the podcast. So, we wanted to do this podcast because it's kind of time sensitive. But I think it's going to be something that down the road everybody's going to have to deal with, much like with Jared Freitas. We talked about what to do when you're preparing for a pen test, what to look for when you're dealing with an MSSP. So in the news, I don't know if you've been on Twitter or anything, but there was a gentleman by the name of Nick Selby, and he did a blog post about, I would say, about the worst thing that you could ever have happen when you're dealing with an MSSP. They had to roll IR, and some of the devices that were put into place were not necessarily configured properly. So instead of me having to explain, I'm going to go ahead and bring Nick on, and also a special guest who has an MSSP of his own. We're going to have him talk about it. Kevin Johnson, you might have heard him on our second interview ever on the show. If you go back to 2014, we did a podcast with him at OWASP, or not OWASP, but Sands Austin, after we did our Sec 542 course. So welcome, Nick. Welcome, Kevin, to the show.
Hey, guy.
Thank you. Howdy. So, Nick, maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit of your background, where you come from, for those who don't know you.
Wow. I'm from New York City originally, and I have been in the information security space for actually almost about 20 years. In 2005, I set up the information security practice at the 451 group, which is now 451 Research.
Okay.
And in 2008 or 9, I got more interested in sort of kicking down doors and grabbing people who were committing cyber crimes, as opposed to just pointing at the people who were committing the cyber crimes. I actually went to the police academy, and I had a sort of a dual life for a while. I was running an incident response company with a friend, and I was working actually as a police officer, first to patrol, and now I'm a detective, and I focus on cybercrime and child pornography investigations, and I'm paid to do that. That's in a Texas agency, which is always fun being from New York and working in Texas. Mm-hmm. And I also now still dabble in and look at incident response for cyber incident response, mainly for companies that are regulated in some fashion, so financial services and medical and legal and things like that. And that's me. That's me right now.
Awesome. Okay. And Kevin Johnson, of course, please tell everybody a little bit about yourself, where you come from, what you're doing.
Man, I'm not from New York. So
wow.
Very few of us can be, Kevin. Very few of us can be.
I know. I don't rate.
I have a Wikipedia page. Do you?
I'm going to ask for forgiveness. I've got a really bad cough right now, so I'm trying to mute me when I'm not speaking. So
that's okay.
But my background, I've been involved in IT for about 25, 26 years. So yeah, I'm feeling old. Been a consultant for a while. Many people know me as the creator of Samurai WTF, Base, mm-hmm. things like that. And I run a security consulting firm called Secure Ideas. Again, many people will know the professionally evil tagline. Sure. And yeah, it's funny you say I run an MSSP. I've never really thought of it as an MSSP. It's just a subscription-based vulnerability assessment. But I guess to a definition of MSSP, it would qualify. So yeah, that's me.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the definition of that, because for me, for an MSSP, it's something where you're taking a mundane or repetitive task and offloading it to a third party, either for removing work required, or maybe even for compliance measures. I know that there's certain compliance frameworks or even contractual obligations. If you deal with a lot of customers that say, hey, do you do independent third party, scanning of your external assets? So, a company might hire a third party to do that. And that was my definition of what an MSSP is. Maybe Kevin has a different version.
No, I think that definition fits what I consider an MSSP. Most people that I've talked to kind of lean toward more log management type stuff, right? Uh-huh. Watching the traffic, monitoring things, stuff like that. I absolutely think you're right. The idea of offloading it to a third party for whatever reason, compliance, you don't have the skill set in-house, what have you. Sure. And so, yeah, from that definition, I agree that our scout services, and I feel like a sales guy, man. But, that would fit that definition. I've just never really, look, I'm a nerd that accidentally started a business. Never really thought of the fancy terms.
I remember you saying you were going to be part of the 1%. So, you're not.
I think what I said was, I want that my business goal is to be protested by the Occupy movement.
That's right.
Yeah. And
that's a good goal.
No, it's not, because it means a whole bunch of pup tents in my cul-de-sac and my neighbors will get mad.
A lot of patchouli oil.
Oh, jeez. But yeah, let me push back on the definition, because I generally agree with the idea, but I want to push back on the negative connotation of mundane and repetitive, because while that is true, that would tend to understate the importance to the customer of what those tasks represent and what they do.
That's a good point.
Okay.
I look at an MSSP really as as one of those amazing things that could not really have existed maybe 15 years ago in the way that it does now, because of a whole bunch of different things: cloud computing, universal broadband connectivity, the ability to lift a large portion of the whatever traffic, logs, flow, something from your network and bring it someplace else so that other people can at scale view alerts and events and do something to that and add value to it in a way that you might not be able to as a small business. Sure. And I think it's a really important thing. I don't want to diminish the value of that, because to a lot of people it's really the difference between having security and not having security.
Yeah.
I think it's funny that you say that, because I until you said negative, mundane, I didn't take it negatively, but I can absolutely see that viewpoint. I agree. It's very, very important. I know that for our customers that are using the various services in Scout, they couldn't. For many of them, they couldn't do it. Whether it's because they don't know how, they're coming to us because of our experience and what have you, or, in this, I think, and we're going to talk about it more later, but I feel like I got to say it. This is one of the very first, immediate reactions I get when I hear things like, well, the customer should know better. It's like, no, the customer probably can't know better. You and the three of us can look at something and go, well, duh.
Yeah.
But let's be blunt. My wife owns the majority of a security consulting firm, and I don't think she could look at most of what we talk about with regards to this and know whether they were getting the right service, right? And she's smarter than I am.
Okay. So for people who didn't hear the Nick, you've been on other podcasts, the Southern Fried Security over there with Uncle Armor Guy, Martin Fisher and them. You told the story a little bit over there. I was just wondering if you could do a brief recap for people, and I'll have a link to the show notes for Southern Fried Security, because they're good podcasts too. I listen to them a lot. And
also, conceivably, you could link to my blog where I actually write about it.
And we'll have a link to the blog too, just in case you ever add anything or any updates to this. But could you give us a recap or and any updates that might have happened and talk about the story of what happened here?
Sure.
So to start, you were brought in for incident response. Somebody rolled incident response, right?
Yeah, they pushed the panic button. Somebody's hair was on fire, and we came in and took a look. And among the first questions that I usually ask is, okay, what visibility do you have? And this is a financial services company, and they've got a small staff, maybe I don't know, 6 or 7 people to do security and some network guys. And I mean, it's not a tiny place, but it's not a big business. And what kind of visibility do you have? And they're like, oh, we've got this MSSP. And they're giving us visibility, and they're actually looking at threats, and they can give us things like indicators of compromise. And hey, that's terrific. Let's fire that baby up. It's like, well, okay, let's get on the phone. And they do a little bit of work, and they suddenly realize that the box from this MSSP is actually sitting in the wrong place, and it's basically in their DMZ, and it's not able to see any of the traffic. And the box had been there for some time. I now learned since this, because a lot of people have asked me about it, and we're going to get into this, but I have learned that there was an email sent by the MSSP to the customer specifically instructing the customer how to install this box and where to install this box. So that was an interesting little snippet. And so we basically, what happened was we put the box in the right place and we plugged the right hoses into the right nozzles, and we called up the MSSP, and we had all the technical people from the company and me sitting around the table, and we had one question for the MSSP. It's like, okay, now that the box is actually seeing what we expect it to see, please tell us, do you see, now that we are in the middle of an incident, do you see any beaconing, any known bad, any kind of anomalous things? Is there a box inside this network that's trying to speak to China or Bangladesh or something like that? Just anything that looks weird, give us an idea so that we can start our hunt. And the long and the short of it is, through a series of increasingly absurd excuses, the MSSP refused to answer. And when we really pushed them, and by we, I mean actually the client. It wasn't me. I didn't have to do any of this yelling because the client was yelling already. They finally gave us a little bit of information, and then as soon as they started rolling, they're like, okay, listen, I got to go. I got to get off. I have a conference call. And the client was like, what, are you kidding me? And the guy said, no, I'm not kidding. I got to go.
Now,
and he hung up.
Now, so is this okay? So they were naturally, and I would be if I'm having a crisis, so I would expect the company that I'm contracting with to feel that same kind of crisis. Is this a thing like, they see this all the time, they're kind of feeling inured to it, where they're, this happens all the time,
If I may, I know, Nick, I know that question was addressed to you, but this is something I've heard a lot about, and I'll be honest, I don't care. By the way, my understanding is, no, this was not something they see all the time. But I don't think it's ever appropriate to say to a customer who is in an emergency, no matter how right or wrong their emergency may be, right?
Yeah.
To say, I got to go, I got another conference call, goodbye, click.
Sure.
Look, I'm a 12-person company, and I don't believe in 6 years of running our business we've ever said to a customer, hey, really sorry, you suck, goodbye, I got to go.
Yeah.
Sorry, but that's the worst case scenario there is, hey, I have to go. Let me get somebody on this call who can help you.
Yeah, let me get somebody on the phone who's smarter than me to help you.
Oh,
yeah.
Yes. And well, but I want to be clear, because the question is a little bit, and I think that these definitions are going to become very important when we talk about the things to talk to your MSSP about. Is this the kind of thing that they see all the time? Let me be very clear. The actual problem that we had on the network was garden variety, run of the mill, every day, completely sand on the beach normal. So
Okay.
so if you're asking, is the kind of activity on the network normal? I would say yes, for people who've got, infections and problems on their network. But if the question is, do customers whose hair is on fire call the MSSP in desperate need for help and vision and guidance? Is that normal? I think it probably happens quite a bit. And that's both a testament to the level of maturity of the customer, the level of effectiveness of the MSSP, and the level of integrity that the MSSP has.
Mm-hmm. Could this have been like an SLA thing? I know if you call some companies, you have either 8x5 or 24x7, or you have you leave a message and they'll get back to you within 4 hours, that kind of thing. Was it an SLA kind of thing?
Well, in my opinion, it was an SLA kind of thing. And that's actually part of the big problem is that, so we called it 11 o'clock on a Tuesday or something. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't 11 in the morning on a Tuesday. So they weren't out of their service hours. But evidently what I would imagine from what I could glean reading between the lines was, that my customer paid for X and they needed Y, and X doesn't go into Y unless you pay for Y. Yeah. Now, having said that, allow me to tell you what I believe Kevin would say or any other MSSP would say, what I certainly say to my customers when they ask me to do something that's above and beyond what I've contracted for. If I can deliver it to them, what I would say is, okay, I need to tell you something. Usually what you're asking me for is above and beyond what you've paid for. I'm going to give this to you right now because your hair is on fire. When my sales guy calls me next week, please remember this, because I really want to help you and I would never leave you in the lurch. Let me tell you everything I see on your network right now. That's what I would do. That's what any smart MSSP would do, right?
I could tell you from past examples. Look, up until soon to be, my company doesn't do IR. Our MSSP is vulnerability scanning, web testing, and phishing. And we got a call from a customer, and to be really blunt, this is a customer who their contract ended in December. They went radio silent. We never got a renewal. They didn't respond to any of our emails. Our phone calls went to dead ends, nothing. And so we wrote them off. It just, okay, wow. They seemed really happy with the service. I don't know what happened. I'd like to know what happened, and then one Friday night at 1:45, I got a phone call from the new CIO IT guy, right? The reason they had gone radio silent is when they fired the last guy, they didn't keep good records. They didn't know who we were. They just, you know what I mean? But they were out of contract. They owed us money. The guy called me up and said, I don't know what to do. I don't know what my network is, and I have ransomware. Help. Okay. I canceled family plans. I worked with him all night Friday night, all day Saturday, and all day Sunday. And what I said is exactly what Nick just said. Hey, next week when Andrew, my account manager, calls you up to renew your contract, remember all the stuff I'm doing for you right now.
Yeah. And you know what? Even if he doesn't, right? Even if Andrew calls him next week and the guy's like, I don't need this anymore, and he hangs up, you've not really lost anything, right? You lost your weekend.
Yeah.
But I did the right thing.
You did the right thing. And you did the right thing by your customer. And in my experience, believe it or not, as somebody who, works in security and works in law enforcement, most people are honest. And they're really, most people are going to remember that. And they're going to remember it with some fondness. And I'll tell you, the look on the faces of the people in the room when this MSSP did what they did, it was nothing short. It was betrayal. That's what I saw. I saw a bunch of kids who got their stuff stolen by the guy who said he's going to take care of them, and that's what hurt me so much. That's what got me so angry.
So Nick, this is probably some fly-by-night, unheard of shop. I'm not going to ask you to name names because there's probably legalities and stuff going on, but it's a fairly unwell-known place, right?
I would say that they're a market leader. That they are one of the the people who if Gartner or Forrester have a list of the top 20, then they're in that group.
Okay. So I mean, is this the thing of they got so big that they don't really need to worry about losing a customer? Or, I mean, obviously there's been some kind of media press because your blog apparently has blown up a little bit, and it's going to blow up because of this. But you mentioned before the show that lawyers are being consulted. So, I mean, this is a major deal.
Yeah. Now they haven't contacted me yet. Waiting for it. They have contacted the customer and informed the customer that they felt that this was defamation, that I was defaming them, even though I didn't mention their name, even though I didn't give any indication of who it was, and didn't even mention the customer's name. So I don't know how I'm defaming anybody. And also, by the way, it was true, and I didn't do it for malicious purposes. But you get a litigious group of people. My customer found it very funny because he said, "Wow, I got more executives on the phone now than I ever had as a customer." And this is because you're, wanting me to get upset with you about this guy who helped us when you didn't.
Yeah.
And they kind of thought that was funny. I think that there's another thing in the news where, people take security problems and then they try to handle the fallout by attacking the person who's breaking the news. Mm-hmm. It's a fairly common ploy. And, I'm not the problem, and my customer is not the problem. Did my customer make a couple of mistakes? Yes, they absolutely did. But my customer wasn't the problem.
Yeah.
The MSSP was the problem.
Yeah. Now I've gone over this with some people on Twitter and in various chat groups in generics, but it's quite polarizing actually. There's some people that are like, okay, the MSSP dropped the ball, which they did. Because there's poor communication all around, from the customer to the MSSP back to the customer. I've actually had one person who said that it was all the customer's fault because they should never assume anything from an MSSP. I don't know if he has a low opinion of MSSPs in particular or what, but he said that you should never assume that everything is going right. My only answer to the defense was, if it's a well-known enough company, there's a certain reputation that comes with that you expect them to actually know what they're doing and to do the job. So you should, there's some confidence there that they actually are knowing what they're doing, and you should be able to say, okay, that box has been checked for compliance necessarily. We'll review that later. Of course, it was 3 years later, which is a little bit long. But, you should feel safe knowing that X company is watching your network. Am I wrong in all of this?
Not from my standpoint. I think that the problem is actually more fundamental. I think that there's an asymmetry of understanding. There's a real imbalance of customer comprehension of terms that are used in the contract. And I think that there is a great deal of salesmanship and marketing that goes into the selling of these services. The breathless prose on the website, the sales pitch that they give really does imply or outright state that you really have nothing to worry about. And they'll say things like, we have security monitoring 24/7 by 365. Now, does that mean that me as a customer, that I'm buying somebody looking at my stuff 24/7, 365, or does that mean that you have a SOC that's open 24/7, 365?
Yeah.
That's not clear unless you've been in this rodeo, right?
Yeah.
And the company could say, look, that's not misleading. They signed up a service level agreement that gave them Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. But every discussion with the sales guy talked about their 24/7, 365 service. What's the difference between an incident and an event and an alert? Who decides when an event is an incident or an alert is an event? Like, how does that happen? Does the MSSP decide to do triage and not give you the notice until the end of the week? But the customer thinks they have a bat phone, right? The customer is believing that this MSSP has got their back, that these certified security analysts are going to be watching their stuff. And that's one other thing. They talk about, we're going to be looking at your traffic and your logs, and we're going to be seeing a lot of things. And I think that that's not true. I think that even if they just said, we're looking at your logs and flows and full packet capture, Really? Is that what the analyst is looking at? Because I think that the analysts at this MSSP for this particular service are actually looking at the alerts generated automatically. Mm-hmm. They're not actually looking at the underlying traffic.
Okay.
I could be wrong. I'm not actually, before the lawyers get involved, I'm not saying that that's what they do. I'm just saying that that's what it feels like. Because there were a lot of people who had to dig into a lot of things before we actually got somebody who really understood what we meant, the difference between the alerts and the traffic.
Well, isn't that always the way it is, though? I mean, you call the cable company, and the first thing is you've got the guy his name is Jim, but obviously his name isn't Jim.
Right.
He's level 1. He wants you to reset the cable box. He wants you to ping Google. He wants you to do all that stuff. And then if something is wrong, then he moves you on to the glorious level 2 person who knows a little bit more. And then you go up to a level 3. There's that tiered thing. With a big enough organization like that, they have to have that kind of,
Well, of course they do. But right now, the whole question is, what can you expect? Was the customer wrong to expect that the MSSP had its back? I say no, because that's what the MSSP said, right? Yeah. They said that they'd have your back. Now you get into operational things. Of course, you're going to go through tier 1. And of course, that person's going to be in Mumbai and they're going to be talking about, did you unplug your network and restart it? And that's kind of okay. But I think part of the problem is that expectation setting of this reputable security company that's going to be doing monitoring in their 24/7, 365 place with certified security engineers or analysts or whatever they're calling them, that does give you the sense that you're being taken care of.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're not, it's one of those things where they're technically right, but really wrong in what they're saying, because if the customer doesn't know the difference and hasn't asked the questions, then they're not going to know. And I will say one other thing. If a box has been in for more than 12 hours and you've told the MSSP that your network is 500 endpoints and 150 servers, and what the MSSP guys see is 5 servers and 3 endpoints, I believe that it's incumbent upon them to investigate and alert. By the way, in our case, the MSSP claims that they sent such an alert to the customer, and the customer didn't get back to them. The customer has said to me that they never got that email, but they did get other emails. So, let's just assume that the MSSP sent an email. Is that the level of care that's appropriate? Kevin, what would you, am I wrong in thinking that they should do more than send an email? Wouldn't it be a great time to have the account executive call?
Are you implying that email is not a guaranteed delivery mechanism that absolutely arrive on time every time? My goodness. No, I'm sorry, I get irritated.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is, if the same email address that is sending alerts is also the same one that sends out the marketing emails, I would probably not get those either, because I would block the first marketing email I got, and then everything else would go to whatever email system you have that blocks that kind of stuff. So
I think that to answer your question and tie directly to what you're saying, Brian, I expect better service from anybody I'm paying money for.
Yep.
I was talking to Denise and my daughters, and we're at dinner. And I'm well aware of the fact that waiters and waitresses have a crap job. It's a job I couldn't do, right? You get paid very little. You're hoping the person is nice enough to maybe give you a tip. No matter what happens, it's your fault, right?
Yep.
But the waitress is the first person to walk up to make sure that your food isn't right. They're the first person to come in and say, this is the problem that's happening. They make sure if they're doing their job right? Mm-hmm. And they get crap.
Yeah.
We have companies who are making hundreds of thousands of dollars a month from customers and who can't take the time to make a phone call and say, hey, did you get that? Do you know what's going on?
It wasn't like, hey, you missed the invitation for our barbecue next month. I don't see the traffic we're supposed to be monitoring. Can you please wiggle the cord, or let's figure this out? I mean, it's a fundamental thing.
Well, at the very least, send that email every month with the invoice, right?
Yes.
I mean, I feel like I keep coming back to it, but when we are doing regular testing for customers and we've got one of our SIAMs on site and we lose connectivity to that SIAM, our customer gets an email immediately from us.
Yeah.
And then if we don't hear back from that email, they get another one. And then if we don't hear back from that email, Andrew gets on the phone and calls somebody. And this is before it's time for them to have the next test. So to have an MSSP say, well, I didn't see any traffic. That traffic I was supposed to be monitoring, I didn't see it. And I sent you an email and I never heard back from you. So I just assumed you wanted to continue to pay me to accomplish nothing for you.
Yeah.
Well, here's my question. So, Kevin, you've already admitted you're a company of 12. So you know each and every one of your people by name, by face, I would hope. When you climb out of your ivory tower from the CEO desk or whatever.
Yeah, ivory tower.
So you've got this MSSP who, you've got the level 1 guy who's supposed to be monitoring this stuff. He probably, I'm going to play devil's advocate because I bet one hand doesn't wash the other. He probably doesn't know how many endpoints he's supposed to be monitoring on this host. He just sees a number or he sees a name. He doesn't know that, I'll throw out a name, Happy's Bait Shop has 500 endpoints. He just sees a name or a number and he sees a log stream.
Then he's not doing his job. And here's why. When you sign up for an MSSP like that, because I've been both a customer and a vendor, right? You provide information like that. And even if you don't know, which that would be atrocious, if you're responsible for monitoring a network and you don't have the information as a company to know what size network you're monitoring. By the way, that's how you priced things. Let's just point that out.
Yes.
If you don't know that information, ask, right? Or, hey, it's a financial services organization. It's a retail location. It's a manufacturer of this size. Well, I know they should have about this much traffic, right?
Yeah.
This is not rocket science.
We had, I just want to interrupt. We had a company that sells technology to law enforcement agencies, and law enforcement is very much like small business, right? They're small. They have very limited resources. They have very limited information technology resources. They're not the most advanced of users, and we had some systems in a whole bunch of agencies. And what we ended up doing, because we realized that a lot of times the customer wouldn't know when something was wrong, we actually hired somebody whose full-time job it was to log into every system every day and just click things and see if they worked and file trouble tickets just to make sure that the level of service was up there. That was one full-time employee. That's all he did. He didn't know what they were doing with it. He didn't care. Neither did we, but we knew that it was our responsibility to make sure that we were delivering the service that we contracted.
Right.
And that's how we did it, and that's a simple solution.
And if I may jump back to the other part of your question, Brian, you made the comment, and I understand playing devil's advocate. When I come down from my ivory tower, which that's my new nickname for my standing desk, because I'm healthier now. I have a standing desk.
That's awesome.
But when I come down from my ivory tower, you're absolutely right. The 12 people in my company, I know what they look like. I know what they're doing. I know what they're working on. Okay, so the CEO of Bell South, does Bell South even exist still? Let's just pick on them for a second, right?
Okay.
The CEO of Bell South doesn't know every single person that works for them. They don't recognize their face. But I'll tell you right now, the salesperson who is responsible for the account, that they're making a commission, that the only way they continue to make that commission is if they build a relationship with that customer, damn well better know who's working on the stuff and what's going on with that thing and every other piece of that. So what you should be able to do is take the large top 20 MSSP, whatever reference we want to call them at, and I'm so tempted to say who they are because it irritates me. And come at me, right?
Yeah,
but that MSSP, they should be able to split their company into those 20-person pods where the boss knows what's going on. And that person is making sure that the relationship is there. And if you're not getting that level of service from the person who is selling you and making a commission, who's paying their mortgage and for their Tesla and whatever else you pay for in wherever, I almost said the city they're in.
Yeah.
Then you're getting ripped off.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be inappropriate here for a second, but I will say, in my opinion, any other excuse, any other looking at, well, did the customer know how to hook that up? Did the customer know not to? Is the same thing as saying, why did she wear that short dress?
Oh,
and
yes.
She drank a lot.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I get that. So I have another thought. So there are companies that Kevin has told me about that I tried to sway my company away from, but we ended up moving with those folks anyway, where they hire and they basically teach you one thing. And since Nick the way he was telling the story where he had to go up like 3 different tiers before he could get to anybody, could this just be a product of poor training, or where you're sitting there and, okay, I'm going to sit you down. If this blinks red, you need to let us know because we have certain filters in place to do da da da. If they're just hiring mouth breathers or putting asses in seats that aren't necessarily technical, could this be why, it's a comedy of errors? I mean, could it be all of those things that are causing this to be a problem?
I'll say this: the first two people who answered the phone, and I put this in the blog, they were like the people you get when you call AT&T to complain about your bill.
Yeah.
But the third guy we got, he knew what he was talking about. He was a professional, and he was somebody who knew. Not only did he know exactly what we were asking, but he had some. I would just say that I find it difficult to believe that somebody with the level of intelligence and quickness that I heard on the phone was as dim as he had to pretend to be. Because it was very strange. What he said didn't jibe with the other things that he said. So I don't think that it was a question of training. I think it might have been a question of policy. I think it might have been a question of the requirements for what you tell a customer. But I think that you pointed at it a little bit before, like, these customers, are the customers dumb, really is what it comes down to. And I think, I don't know if they think that the customers are dumb, but I do think that there's a contemptuous view of these people who are paying them, $20,000 a quarter to get monitoring that maybe these guys who work there think is kind of stupid. I just don't know what these guys are thinking. But I will say that the way they're treating the customers from my perspective, being a customer and sitting in the customer room, watching the customer's reaction, it was contemptuous, and it did not behave with the care that I believe is incumbent upon the provider based on the contract that they had.
Sure. Okay. So, all right, let's move on. We beat up on this guy. I hope I don't get called to court when this finally goes wherever it goes. So I've got 2 more points to make. We're going to talk about what you should expect when you're engaging an MSSP. Expectations. Do you need an MSSP in the first place? Maybe a box would suffice. So since Nick has to deal with MSSPs, maybe he could start with what, from a customer side, he should expect. And maybe Kevin, from the MSSP side, can, what is the MSSP expecting of the customer? So I'll start with Nick.
I'm going to say that it's really good because you said maybe a box would be better, and just think about the kind of due diligence that you do when you're buying a box. Like if you're going to buy an appliance to do something, and you start to look at it, and you start to look at speeds and feeds, and you start to look at reviews, and you start to look at the magic quadrant and the Forrester wave or whatever these things are, and you gradually build things down. I don't think that people do the same kind of research with MSSPs in terms of the not the brand name of MSSP that you're going to go with, but the terms of the actual contract. And I think that understanding those terms is as important as understanding the throughput of a network box. You need to understand what these terms mean and don't assume anything. That whole thing about 24/7, 365, does that mean for me or for you? Like, that's a really fundamental question, and I don't know how many times people ask that. So I would say if you don't have the in-house ability to really understand and map those metaphors and understand what they're saying, I would really recommend that you get whoever your security consultant is, buy 2 hours of their time. This is something else I find astounding. Most people don't think anything of having their lawyer talk to the other guy's lawyer when you're working on a contract. Why wouldn't you have a security consultant talking to their security consultant when you're trying to negotiate an MSSP deal on which you are actually handing the keys to your kingdom? So I think that that's really important, getting the help that you need to ask the questions to understand the terms. Then it's just a business decision. Okay.
All right. So, Kevin, same question in reverse. What should the MSSP expect from the customer? I mean, are we expecting, because when we talked with Jared about a pen test, it ended up being like, the pen tester had to come in. He said he had a lot of times where he came in and they were clueless about what to ask for a pen tester. So what are we looking for an engagement when an MSSP is engaging somebody? I mean, obviously not the dollar bill. They should be asking real questions from the customer, right?
If I may, I'd like to make a comment about the other side first, and then absolutely jump on this.
Sure.
One of the things that I wish people would do more of, and I love Nick's idea of, call a consultant that will help you. If your consultant won't just help you out, sell you a couple hours or whatever, or even just be a sounding board, then they're not a good consultant. But one of the things I wish customers would do is to stop paying so little attention to the reality and so much attention to marketing. And the great example of this in my mind is there was a company out there, and again, won't name any names, that made a big deal about the fact that they started offering a money-back guarantee. And I sat down with one of their salespeople, and I said, hey, I would love to know more about this because my customers would like to know more about this. And I'm a firm believer in helping my customer get the right thing, even if it's not from me. And what it boiled down to, and I want to be clear, I never looked at their contract, so maybe the salesperson was saying it wrong, but it was, if you were breached by a vulnerability that they should have found but didn't, and you could absolutely prove that was the cause of the breach, you got back 1 month's service.
Yeah. Only a month. Wow. That sounds like that there was a Porky Pig and a Daffy Duck cartoon where, Porky signed an insurance thing and he only got $1 million if he was hit by a stampede of elephants on a Tuesday during a lunar eclipse at noon or something. And it all happened, of course, but, there's so many conditions and fine print that, it makes that kind of thing impossible.
And like I said, I've never read their contract, but that's how it was explained. And it's like, man, that's pretty dang specific, right? That's
a really lame-o guarantee.
Yeah, that's not the world press news, whatever. Yeah. But from a MSSP perspective, I think your comment from Jared is absolutely correct. I mean, heck, 2 years ago, we did a recording of a podcast describing the exact same thing where, we deal with customers every day that just don't know what we mean. And they know they need to be secure, but they don't know what secure is, right? And so when an MSSP is working with a customer, it is critical that MSSP ensures that the technical details are covered.
Yes. And that's the thing. That's when your integrity comes out. That's, people say that your character is how you behave when people aren't looking.
Yep.
As a security professional, your ethical responsibility is to your customer. And if your customer doesn't get it, then you have to go beyond. You have to do it. I'm not saying do it for them. I'm not saying save their job. I'm not saying that you have to live in their house and start fixing all their stuff. But damn it, you should do that report in such a way that and tell them, look, man, you really got to get somebody else to look at this. I'm telling you the things that I need that I found, but I would really encourage you. Here's 3 phone numbers of 3 other people you should call right now because you need to understand this.
Yeah.
That's important. And I don't think that you can sit there and say, well, your contract only says that you get a 36B warning, and that includes these words. That's not what the customer thinks they're signing on for.
And
it's like, I'm sorry, it's like hiring a bodyguard and you're walking down the street and somebody punches you in the throat and the bodyguard stands there. You're like, what are you doing? You're like, well, you hired me to stop people from shooting you. I mean, there's an expectation that you're going to protect them.
Right.
Not just from specific kinds of threats.
Yep. So
check out the analogy.
Yeah, look at you. Look at the big brain on Brett over there. Yeah. All right. So if it's all marketing hype, Kevin was working on the MSSP side. How do you I don't know. Obviously the MSSP wants to make a sale because they want to make money because that's what they're in the business to do. Which is why I don't like going to demos. I don't like doing POCs because they always try to paint everything with such a rosy red picture. It's important to have the security consultant on the side with the client, but why would the MSSP or why would a customer or a company want to talk to the security consultant? Because that's a I don't know. It's a cock block. It's not a cock block. I'm gonna have to edit that out. He's a barrier. He's a barrier to a sale. He's a barrier to a sale.
I think he's actually empowering the sale from the standpoint of the MSSP because you're dealing with a more intelligent customer, so they're not going to be pissed as hell a month later when they find out that they bought something that they didn't understand.
Okay.
And if talking to the security consultant, keep in mind we're talking, hire a security consultant for small companies that don't have the staff on board. If you've got really hardcore security people that really understand this stuff,
then you don't need it.
Talk to the person, right? If the MSSP is not comfortable selling to an educated customer, that should be your first sign not to deal with that MSSP.
Yeah. In law enforcement, we call that a coup. That's one of those things. I think that it sets up the sale for success, and we're only talking about a couple of hours too.
Yeah.
I would also throw out there one of the things that I find when I used to work for corporations as their internal staff. One of the things I always like to do, because you're absolutely right. I get a kick when people ask me for references. I've never given a reference who didn't like me, right?
Exactly.
Hey, Nick, you hate my guts. Can you call this potential customer and tell them exactly why you hate my guts?
Johnson, he owes me money.
Yeah, exactly. Like that, there's no way, right? So, and they're always going to show you the best product. They're it's going to be perfect. It's going to solve all your needs. What I liked to do when I was buying stuff, and still do periodically, I go research what their product is capable of, and then I ask them if they can do something that they explicitly can't.
And see what they say.
Yeah. Exactly. Like, how does the sales guy respond? If the sales guy's answer is, "Oh, geez, it's funny. We just added that feature yesterday," right?
Right.
Yeah.
Kick them out.
So one of the things that Kevin, I heard him talking about recently, actually, because we were talking about this, and he said, he's been in customers that had an MSSP, in fact, the same one, and. And they were Kevin's group was doing a pen test, and now at this point you got a binary thing. Do you see anything?
Mm-hmm.
And we can even tell you where you should see it from.
Right.
Yeah.
Like that's a really good way to test to test it. I am reminded somehow. Dave Eitel about 10 years ago said Snort is the best IDS. Because IDS doesn't work, so you should get the cheapest. And I think that it's sort of like if your MSSP cannot detect something you are absolutely certain is happening, that's a good indicator that they can't detect something that you don't know is happening.
Yeah.
And when you ask them why they didn't detect it, and they give you an asinine response like the one in the story that Nick is mentioning, their response was, "Oh, we knew that IP address was a pen tester, so we didn't alert on it."
Yeah, we have a database.
Yeah, I happened to be testing from my house that week. So the IP address was a dynamic one from Comcast, right?
Yeah.
Like that was such a stupid answer. It wasn't even worth the bits in the email.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's, yeah, I wonder, God. So a lot of times when people are looking for MSSPs or something, the first thing they do is they look at the Gartner quadrant. How are we going to, how does this type of thing become public and still affect Gartner? I mean, obviously these people need to know about this, because is this a one-off? Is this something that happens a lot? I mean, is it where people finally give up and throw their hands up and do like, because I want to talk about what you guys finally did to get the IR fixed, but do they throw up their hands and just figure out a workaround and go, okay, well, maybe, we're just checking a box with them, what I don't know if this is something that's widespread, and since you can't name names and nobody wants to name names for fear of being, lawyered up, how does this kind of thing, scenario-wise, end up in a Gartner report and help them, get dropped a little bit on the ratings and stuff like that?
Well, I don't think I don't think that that's Gartner's purpose. I think that Gartner's purpose is, and all the analyst firms, and I speak as a former analyst because I worked at the 451 group, and I can tell you that, I would sort of take a story like this into account. I have been contacted by several journalists after I wrote this, and I got contacted by one journalist who actually gave me names, and he understood not only who my customer was, which really shocked me, but he also knew who the MSSP was, and he had sources that were really good.
Yeah.
And he asked me a lot of very, very pointed questions, which left me with the indelible feeling that he is actually seeing this as a pattern. I think that we should just wait and see. But I do think, yes, they look at the Gartner reports. Remember, Gartner reports are there primarily to help you disqualify people.
Yeah.
With broad strokes, right? Well, that's an appliance, and I don't want an appliance. I want software, so I can't consider that. And that's the level, I think, of Gartner reports. Or I'm down to these three. Let's see what Gartner says. Oh, Gartner says that they're just about to go bankrupt. All right, that's interesting. But I think that it's up to the technology press. I think it's also up to us in the community to help police ourselves and to help talk amongst ourselves, but less hush. I think that there's a real there's a tendency in the security world to all think that we're doing something really important and secret, and like we're all like James Bonds, and that's just crap. We overclassify things all the time. Yep. And I think that the things that shouldn't be overclassified is stories like this, because we need to hear about this.
Yeah. Well, we're all afraid of ending up in the prison, with the conjugal visits and stuff. So
sure, but I mean that reporter came back to me really quickly, and he had already got it. And another reporter, I don't think I've had a single reporter not know who I was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah.
And I didn't say it.
Yeah.
And I'll point out that the minute I shared Nick's post on my Facebook wall, I got a ton of private messages from people who worked at the MSSP.
Oh, I didn't know this.
I don't know that you're talking about us, but man, can we talk?
Why, are they looking for jobs or something?
I don't know. It was just funny to me that everybody knows who we mean.
Okay. Well,
nobody's going to say it.
Well, let me ask the question. Since you guys have, and Kevin, maybe you can answer this, since you've had so many people reach out to you, and did you find out if there's an internal investigation going on to fix the processes involved with this, or pattern, the escalation pattern, or perhaps, trying to streamline the escalation process?
I have not been told about an internal evaluation process going on. Every single person, practically, there's a couple that just said, "Hey, I'd love to talk to you about this," and that's where they left it. But the vast majority of the people came back with, "Yeah, we have a problem with that."
Oh,
and
that's interesting.
Now I will be clear. I don't know what part of that business they worked in. So it is very possible that it's I hate the people in that other department, and they're not as good as me, right? But I find it's kind of like there's a vendor, and I'm going to name them because I'm really impressed with how well they've turned themselves around. Rapid 7 used to be known as Rabid 7. And it was because their salespeople, I mean, my old boss, I think he said that he got 87 calls in one workday from a single sale.
Wow.
Right? And the entire InfoSec community that I know, right, knew that Rabid 7 was crazy. You did not want them, like, it was a prank to give somebody else's business card to a Rapid 7 salesperson.
Yeah.
But Rapid 7 took that information and did a 180. I almost said a 360, but that would be bad.
That would be
bad. I mean, they spun it around, and the people that I know at Rapid 7 now, and that's why I feel comfortable saying, right? Like,
yes,
these guys did damn good.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing the same thing. The problem we're seeing is that, you know, they've been having this problem forever, and they don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's it's just messed up.
Yeah. So I guess,
but the answer to the other question was how do we get out of it? And really, once we realized that the MSSP was literally worthless to us in terms of fighting that particular incident, we just basically spun up Security Onion and we plugged as many fees as we could into a monitoring jerry rig. Mm-hmm. And we fired it up, and we just started looking at things and disqualifying things. And what we were looking for was really, what is weird? Is there something so weird that we can't turn systems back on? So we put out the fire, we fixed the problem, we located the problem, really the old-fashioned way. And I have to tell you, there's been a lot of people asking about the customer. The customer did a phenomenal job of localizing the problem, limiting the scope, and pulling plugs, pulling network cards, and really helping us so that it didn't spread. They really arrested the spread. And then we were able to look for things popping up, and we found a few things popping up because we got eyes. As soon as we got eyes on the network, and then to their great credit, they were all like, wow, show us that. And so we did, and we basically just left it there, and now they're building out their own security program, and they're doing log management, they're doing flow management, they're starting to look at things. That's great. So yes, did the customer make mistakes? They sure did. But did they learn from them immediately and try to turn it around? Absolutely. These guys, the customer really has integrity.
Cool. Very cool. So, I mean, I wanted to go into find out if this was going to affect them audit wise. I mean, obviously you said they're a financial institution, so they have to deal with all kinds of malware infections,
Yep.
These kinds of, other compliance requirements. How do they rebound from this? Are they going to show, what they've done to fix the deficiency? Do they have to get another MSSP? Obviously, I guess they're going to be consulting you on that in the future. And
I can't do that. I can't go into the details, but I can tell you this: when I say that they had integrity, from the beginning, we had the CEO and the COO coming in. I would say every 2 hours, just finding out what's going on and making sure that we hadn't crossed any reporting lines. Trying to make sure, they had their lawyer on the phone. They were like, as soon as we hit any thresholds of reporting, we need to start the reporting. We've got all sorts of things. And they were incredibly diligent about making sure that they had the information that they needed to make those kinds of decisions. How that will affect them coming up, that's a business issue, a legal issue, and I'm sort of out. If you see me, somebody screwed up. If you see Kevin, somebody's trying to get better. That's a really good way to put it.
All right. So I guess before we go, I just wanted to get last thoughts from, and we'll start with Kevin this time, and then go to Nick about the whole messy business, and what do you see as a learning experience? I mean, maybe even from an MSSP experience, what you would not do in the future, or maybe something you would do better yourself.
Jeez. I'd like to say that I don't have to think about how I would do it better because we already do it better.
Marketing guy. Okay.
No, I'm not marketing at all. Just, I know better. to me, it just reiterates the idea that, the only reason we're in business, and, we joked around at the very beginning of this call that my business goal is to be a 1%er. The reality is my business goal is to put myself out of business. If I do my job right, you don't need me.
Sure.
And, Wells Fargo holds my mortgage, is happy to know that that's probably not going to happen soon. But this just completely reiterates to me, and I've preached it to every single one of my employees, that this is why we support our customers. This is why we answer the questions. It's, we want to make sure that what we're providing is actually what they need, not necessarily what they asked for, right? And that's not an upsell, right? Very, very often I'm selling a cheaper service because you don't need the more expensive one. I can't tell you the number of times I've said to a customer, you don't need a pen test. You're not ready for a pen test. All a pen test is going to do is beat you up and make you cry. And I was bullied in school, so I don't want to bully my customers. That's what this reiterates to me, and I feel like I'm mushy and gushy and everything else. So I'm gonna finish it with, the guy who bullied me in high school still takes my lunch money every day, but damn, he makes a Subway sandwich. So.
Oh wow, the best revenge is living well, sir.
Yep, exactly. But that's, it really is just a reiteration, right? Sure. Do better.
Yeah, very cool. And Nick, how about you? What were your thoughts about this whole thing?
It brought home sort of the same things that I've seen for a long time in the security business. People can make astonishing quantities of money in the security business. They get to make a lot of money at times of crisis. They get to make a lot of money based on sales that exploit fear, based on sales that exploit weakness or ignorance on the part of a customer, and it goes against everything that I stand for. It goes against everything that many of the people I know in the security industry, the information security industry, and even the security and law enforcement industry, they're the same sort of type. They want to do things for other people, and I think that the difference between being a security engineer and being a network engineer is that you can make less as a security engineer, and that sort of attracts a special kind of person. And I think when you build up a security business to scale, and you start to make decisions based on margins, not decisions based on what is my customer needing and how can I serve my customer better, you might make a marginally larger amount of money, but I think that you give up a lot of the things that the people look to you for, and what they're looking for is help, and they're looking for protection. And I think that it's truly immoral to take advantage of that, just to increase your margins a little bit. Yeah,
no, that's no way to do business, exactly. So yeah, I appreciate that. So gentlemen, it is it's a pleasure. I've never actually met Nick. Will you be at DerbyCon, sir?
Yes.
Oh, cool! I will definitely shake your hand. I
know shake yours back.
I know Mr. Kevin is going to be there. Maybe you could plug your class is sold out, isn't it?
Well, if I'm allowed to plug it, I'll mention the fact that very soon after DerbyCon, we're putting the entire class online for a version that you can take at your own pace.
Nice.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're working pretty hard on that. It ties directly into all of our online training, including the free and low-cost training for vets and first responders. So
yep.
Thank you.
Yep, I was going to pimp out the veteran. If you're a veteran or a first responder, hit them up and they'll hook you up with some good training there. That's
even if you're just a firefighter, you can get that.
Wow. All right. So Nick, how would so if people wanted to continue discussion with you, maybe to find out about how to hire an MSSP or to hire you as a consultant, how would they go about doing so?
I am Selby on Twitter, and my blog is on GitHub. It's nselby.github.io.
Yep.
There's a contact. I actually also have nickselby.com, and there's a contact form there. Okay. So those things, you should be able to find me.
Yeah, we'll have links in the show notes there. So,
Oh, great. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Mr. Kevin, please feel free to tell us how people can get a hold of you, both personally and professionally.
Well, my social security number is.
Wow. Wow, you're going that route. Okay.
So, absolutely. SecureIdeas.com is the main website. My Twitter account is @SecureIdeas. And you can always, if you're interested in the free training for vets, SecureIdeasTraining.com is where that's at.
Very cool.
So yeah,
That's first responders. That's important.
Yeah, first responders and vets. It is very important. And we will have the entire company except for one guy at DerbyCon this year.
Okay.
He has another thing scheduled that week, so he can't come. But we're all going to be out at DerbyCon, looking forward to it. We actually have a pretty cool contest at the booth, so that's what I'll leave that at.
Cool. And of course, you guys you run your Scout program, which is it's not an MSSP, but it is an MSSP. So if you guys are looking for somebody who isn't necessarily on the Gartner Quadrant yet, in the upper right, reach out to Kevin and them over there. They sounds like they've got a pretty special thing going on there. So,
thank you. Yeah,
no problem. So, you can follow the Breaking Down Security podcast at BreakSec on Twitter at BreakSec, BRAKESEC. You can follow me. My personal account is at Brian Brake, BRYANBRAKE. The much missed Mr. Betcher can be found at Betcher Pwned, BOETTCHERPWNED. We have a Facebook page. We're on iTunes. We're on the Google Play Store. I don't think there is any place you can't find us. We're even on the TuneIn Radio app. If you use that for internet radio, we're available on there. You have any comments, questions, or suggestions for the show, or you just like to get a hold of Nick and Kevin without using Twitter, you can hit us up at bds.podcast@gmail.com, and we'll forward those onto them. We appreciate our Patreon supporters. We'd like to thank them all for their support. They help offset some of the costs and the time cost required for putting out our little show here every week. And I'd like to thank all the people that donated over $1,000 to Hackers for Charity through our raffle and through a gentleman today who took my ticket. Aaron, Mrs. Kennedy and Mr. Kennedy gave me a media badge for DerbyCon. Isn't that funny? I'm media. Gods. Yeah. So I'm kidding. It was much appreciated for them to give me media badge, and I was able to give another $300 to Hackers for Charity for my ticket that I sold. So I appreciate them, and will be giving them much awkward hugs. So Nick and Kevin, please come back. We want you on a lot because you guys have a lot to say that's good and helpful for the blue teamers out there and the companies that need protecting. So thank you for coming onto our little show here.
Awkward silence. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
No problem. All right. Well, that was it for Breaking Down Security this week. Have a great week, and we will talk to you again real soon.